it's a requirement that you all start hopping on at least half an hour before. You can leave your computer just running with the session on in the background. I mean, while you're waiting for it to start, because we can't start. I can't sit with nothing happening for 10 minutes. Even 15 minutes. It gets unreasonable, unrealistic, because it is also, my evening that I'm sacrificing to do these sessions for you. It's got to be, if we're going to do this, we must all be 100% committed, and we must all be willing to make the effort to be on sessions on time. Okay, so next time, if I wait 5 minutes and no one's in the class, I'm just not going to do it. And that should speak to all of you, in the essence that you should make an effort to hop onto class long before we actually start. Okay. The thing about trying to sign on at 1/2 is not going to work, especially if the class starts at 1/2. Okay, 1/2 is the kickoff point. It's not a time to start signing in. Okay. Ideally, you want to have signed in by 1:45. So let's say at 5:15, you're on the system, you're waiting. Okay. And then also for the members that are not in the class, and who will watch the recording and whatnot, classes are mandatory. So attending these classes are mandatory. So if you're absent, it's also a problem. Okay, keep in mind that we have to meet notional hours. Okay, it's very important that we meet notional hours. A part of those notional hours is attending these sessions, which are to your benefit at the end of the day. Okay, so before I jump off or start off with my skills program 2, how did we find skills program 1? I know it was very big. It's quite challenging. Let me just see. Abigail, how did you find it?
For me, Carl, it was very challenging. And again, I've noticed that the learner guide doesn't actually have like answers for every question, that for some of the question in the formative and summative.
Yeah, but the learning guide is not supposed to give you answers, That's not how it's meant to guide you, but you have.
I'm saying to read through it to get answers.
Yeah, but I mean, you have a wide array of resources to go get your answers. Let that be a lesson. Don't depend on one resource.
Okay.
Okay. If I solely depended on the study guides for any of my stuff, I'd never get anything done, because that's one perspective, that's one lens. It's 9 out of 10 times it's not even relevant anymore.
Okay.
Okay. Was there any challenges, any other things you struggled with?
Yeah, I struggle mostly with the law, the policies question. Yeah, because I've never done it before. Yes.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I thought the volume of questions would be more of a problem than what the actual, than the components of law and whatnot would be. You know what I mean? I thought that because it was a lot of questions. I'll give you that. Even when I was setting it up, I was concerned about the length. But I'm glad you made a submission. I could see that you got through it, so congrats to you. Have you had any time to look at skills program 2?
Yes.
Okay, and what have you noticed?
I haven't got any, like everything, but for unit standard 1, yeah, it's gonna be challenging for me. I have to really like do my research and really find sources where I could draw answers from, not only depend on the learner guide.
Okay, I think you'll see that this skills program 2 only has 2 unit standards in it, so it's going to be much shorter. The other one had 7 unit
but
standards.
the questions, the questions.
Okay, well, we'll cover the questions before we end the session of tonight.
Okay.
Okay. I know that Ishmael, you're probably driving, so I'm not going to prompt you too much. Maybe just give me a thumbs up or comment in the chats when you're no longer driving. Millie, how did you find skills program 1? Ishmael?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. On Bluetooth, so I'm able to speak. Skills program 1, like you say, a lot of questions, although some of the staff found it to be repetitive here and there. But in terms of getting information, I am in the business of selling content, so that was not a problem for me.
Okay, interesting,
Yeah,
interesting, interesting. I know that some of the questions were repetitive. I agree with you.
yeah,
My hands were tied, you know, because some of the unit standards were so similar that there was very little I can do. So
yeah.
I had to just put it in. I can make minor changes to material, but I can't delete questions, unfortunately.
Mm,
But
okay.
you know what? I think that skills program one, and there's another one. Skills program one is probably the worst that there is. You know, it's the most work that you'll probably encounter in this qualification. Okay. So I like to think of skills program one as the trial. If you survive SB1, you'll do better, or you'll do fine on the other ones. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Let's hear from Millie. How did you find SB1? I know that you haven't made the submission yet. But can you speak to the experience you've had so far? And maybe also just let me know when you might get that submission done. Are you able to hear us, Millie? We're not able to hear you. If you want, you can always comment in the chat box. Let's see if you have anything there. Okay, it's fine. I'm just going to commence then. I can't wait too long. Okay. Okay, cool. So now that we have some feedback on skills program one, now we're going to start looking at SB2. And SB2 is about HR administration, but specifically we're looking at inductions and recruitment. Okay. And you'll see that it's not too complicated. There was nothing I could find that would be a trick or a curveball, you know, to put in the slides, you know, for my discussion, or, you know, to further enhance the discussion of these two unit standards. But what I did is I tried to provide some guidance in terms of how you can approach the questions, especially the first question on the formative, which I believe it's in the formative, which requires you to make a booklet for an induction. Okay, I tried to provide you with an outline, and again, I can't give you too much because I don't want the class to have all the same things for that booklet. But I do want to encourage you to be as creative as possible. Think about what kind of document you would have wanted or would have required when you were being inducted into a workplace or even in a school, any kind of context. Okay. Then we also look at recruitment, and there's a lot to talk about in the space of recruitment. There are many different aspects, or many different areas to touch on. Again, we're not trying to be recruitment experts per se, but you do need to have enough knowledge to understand what is happening in that space because it is human resource management. Okay, you need to be able to understand that there are certain steps we follow in the process of recruitment. Okay, and if you have that understanding, if you know what's happening in the space as an HR manager, you don't have to necessarily do the recruitment yourself. You can delegate the task and manage the task. Manage it, or the individual who's doing that task for you, and you're able to manage it because you know the steps that they'll be walking, the steps they will be following to complete this task. Okay, so I'm going to kickstart. I'll show you the agenda for today. So we will be looking at the, managing the induction of a new staff member, or managing the process of inducting a new staff member, and it's a very important job. It's a very important task, and it is also a nice thing that HR managers get to do is they get to bring new faces, new people into the organization, and just say, hey, this is a new member of our team. Welcome them. Okay, and then 2.2 is all about recruitment and selection. Okay, so what you will see is that I do not have a lot of slides to cover these 2 points because it's not a lot. It's not as much as 7 unit standards that we did in the previous session. So we might not use the full 2 hours, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first one, 2.1. And I want to kickstart 2.1 off with a little bit of a quote by Will Rogers. Okay, Will Rogers says that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And what this quote means is that first impressions are very important, especially in workplace organizations. Okay, remember that when you bring in a new employee, you are making a first impression. They are making a first impression. You want those first impressions to be as good as possible, because in essence, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get this employee to become a part of you or to adopt your organization's culture. And you want to have them eventually contributing to that culture, bringing their own little bit of flavor to the office or the organization that you work in. Okay, so that's why what Will Rogers says is so important is you never get a second chance to redo it, because once that first impression is formed, it is there, it exists, there's no changing, there's no going back. Okay, so it's very important that we take the task of inducting new staff members very, we take it very seriously. Okay. So it's very important to note that the purpose of inducting new staff members is to welcome them, but also to integrate them into the existing staff member, to integrate them as employees in your organization. Okay. Abigail, you can actually put your camera off. I think, yeah, it might make the bandwidth a little bit better. Okay, you don't have to, there's no need for it. I think it might make it a little bit better for you. Okay, cool. And also it like reflects a little, so yeah, okay. Then the next purpose we have is to provide them with the necessary information, resources, and support to become effective team members. Okay, remember, when you're new in an environment, you're never going to kickstart, you're never going to be the number one person in the organization unless you're walking in as the CEO. Okay, if you're new to a finance department, an HR department, your role, you're going to slowly adopt that role. It's not going to be an instant adoption, because you have to learn the ropes before, you have to learn how to crawl before you can start walking and then eventually running with the organization. Okay, I mean, unless the organization is in a state of distress, then you'll walk, or I mean, you'll join an organization and you'll start running immediately. But 9 times out of 10, you're typically you're coming into the organization and you're slowly learning the ropes, you're integrating into the organization. And it's not always a fast or immediate thing. Okay, for new people, for new individuals to the workplace in general, so for people who haven't worked before with no work experience, often what I find is when they start working, that process is even slower. Okay, so you'll find yourself doing less things until the organization trusts you with certain tasks. Then you'll see yourself doing those tasks again and again. And once they've developed that trust, they'll feel comfortable to give you new and different things to do. And before you know it, you'll have a whole repertoire of things that you're allowed to do that they trust you with. Okay, so I'll give an example. When I started facilitating, I was only allowed to do one group, and the material was pre-developed. The group had, I think it had 15 people in it, and there wasn't much to do. It was basically facilitate, mark the work, give the students the feedback, write the reports, and it was that continuous cycle. And now my repertoire of tasks or functions that I partake in involves, mentoring and guiding other facilitators. It also involves the development of content for all the qualifications. It really is a multifaceted job or position that I hold at the organization. And it's very important that I am aware of that, because when I started, it wasn't like that. It was learning to crawl, and then eventually I could walk a bit. And then before we knew it, I was running with confidence and I was bragging about the sessions I was doing. And that's what it's all about, is crawling, walking, and running with the organization. Okay. The objective of inducting new staff members includes understanding the significance of a well-managed induction process. So I want you to understand how important this task is, because it is one. And then learning the key components of an effective induction program. The reason why I want you to learn the components is because you will be making an induction booklet, that could be for any organization of your choice. but you must make the induction booklet that could be given to a new staff member. And that staff member must be informed, must understand their role, must understand the culture of the organization. All of these things are going to come through in the key components that you include in that induction booklet. Okay. You just hit the next. Okay, cool. So inductions are very important, and I've been saying it quite a bit already, but it's very important because it firstly enables employee retention. Okay, a structured induction helps reduce employee turnover rates. So when you present yourself as an organization who takes the induction seriously, you provide employees with a sense of comfort, with a sense of knowing that this organization is legitimate, that they are welcoming me. They feel like that the organization wants them around. All of these contribute to employee retention. It might not be the main or major contributing factor. Maybe a contributing factor might be the fact that the employee is getting finance or the salary or the income, but it does add a little bit. When people feel like have a sense of belonging, and I'm going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that sense of belonging. If you have that sense of belonging, then it's something that contributes to you wanting to be there every day, which in essence would contribute to you wanting to stay, which again contributes to reducing employee turnover rates. Okay. Then it also contributes to productivity. So new employees become productive more quickly. So when you've introduced them and you've taken them around the office, you're showing them the way things work, they often jump in a lot faster and they get to work faster. They become more proactive in delivering on what they're supposed to do, and they look for things to do because they've been introduced properly. Okay. Then the next thing it contributes with is engagement. So it promotes a sense of belonging and engagement with the organization. So again, what we're trying to do is we want our new employees to feel like they belong where they are. And often what I tell my interns or my new team members is that they are where they're meant to be. And yeah, I know, like I'll give an example. We had a new team member who joined, I think last week, and I literally said to him that the work was waiting for him before he walked in the doors at the office. And I think he liked that because he knew that he's going to do something important, that he's going to contribute to something important. Okay, it literally it helps them engage with the organization. If they have a sense of belonging, if they feel like, hey, I walked in today and there's something I have to do. Okay. The other thing it helps with is it helps with compliance. So it ensures that new hires understand the company's policies and procedures. Every company has a wide array of policies and procedures. Some of these policies are implemented because it's legally required. Other policies are implemented because it's what the company deems necessary. And some of these policies differ from company to company. And that's why it's very important that you have this induction process where you show new employees that, how things work, how things operate, because we all do things slightly differently. It doesn't matter where you go, it will be the same flavor but slightly different. And that's just the thing. That's why we do the inductions. We want to show the employee or the new employee that this is how we do things. This is our approach. And they might have different perspectives. They might give you some advice in terms of how we can streamline or make things better. And that's perfectly fine. But it helps with compliance, and that's why we do the induction for employees. Imagine if you didn't do an induction. Imagine, so you bring an employee in. We don't even say, hey, this is our new member. We just show them a desk and we hope that they figure it out. Okay, you get a lot less done if you don't do the induction properly. Okay. So there are pre-induction preparations that need to be done. So what you should do is you should always communicate with the new hires before they start they start working. You must also prepare the workspaces and the necessary equipment, and then arrange for these initial training materials and the meetings and the booklets that you're going to provide. So communicating with them is very important, letting them know where they need to be, what time they need to be there. All of that contributes to creating that sense of security, and just having them know what's or where they need to be. It makes it easier. It ensures that your induction process is a lot smoother. Okay. I had a twin sister who started a job at a very important place, and on day one she was slightly late. and she was nervous when she walked into the office because it's day one. You know, you want to create a good impression. But her new manager just said to her, "It happens," and then they laughed it off, and it was okay. And that sort of thing helps also, especially when you're doing, you know, there's certain things that you cannot account for. So if it's the first time that this employee is driving to a particular location, and you know that getting to this area has a high volume of traffic or those sort of things, then you're just being considered on day one because the employee or individual is still figuring things out. But you know, like 3 or 4 months down the line, if the employee is still rocking up late every day, then it's a problem. Okay. But being a little more forgiving in the beginning, because you know this process of change and transition can be a little uncomfortable, and just having that little bit of empathy can be enough for you to win them over. And if you've won the new employee over, they'll be more willing to do things that you need them to do, and they'll be there when it's crunch time or when there's a little bit of a crisis. Okay, I'm preparing the workspace and the necessary equipment. So there's nothing worse than having a new employee who's just joined and you're really unable to give them the necessary equipment or the place to sit and start working. You know, because in essence, all they're doing is they're coming in and they want to make a good impression. They want a lasting impression. They want to show you that they're there to work for the organization. But they rock up and there's not even a desk to sit on. They don't have a computer. They don't have the thing they need to do the thing. It slows things down. It makes the induction a lot more uncomfortable, uneasy. Okay, so you need to make sure that everything is pre-prepped, and that this includes the initial training material. So if you're using a booklet, make sure that it's printed, it's ready. Don't be printing it the morning of. Um, Make sure communications are sent out at least the day before. Make sure that the workspace and all the necessary equipment is there. Just make sure that you're ready for the new employee that's about to come into the organization. Okay. Um, then we have orientation sessions. So this is once the employees has arrived at the location and you're actually doing the orientation. So you're welcoming them, you're allowing them to do introductions. I know not all employees are comfortable doing an introduction, but when you are operating at that mid-management, upper management level, you are required to give a little bit of a speech and say, "Hi, my name is Carl. I'm here to do this, and this is what I'll be doing for the organization." Just giving a friendly overview of who you are. The other thing which helps a lot is if you are bringing the new employees in and you're having existing management introduce themselves to that employee, just having that little interaction makes it a lot easier. Okay. And then giving them an overview of the company's history, the mission, and the values. Remember, the organization's history, mission, the values, all of these play a part of who the organization is and what they're aiming to get done. It's the reason why all the employees are required to wake up every morning and go to the office. So it's very important that your new employee knows about these things, because it's literally the purpose, it's the reason, it's the rationale. Without this, what is the point of doing what we're doing? Okay. And then the next one says an explanation of organizational structure and key personnel. So you want the employee to know who they should speak to if they're dealing with particular issues. You want them to know who they're reporting to. You want them to know what is a no-no, like the places they shouldn't go, people they should avoid. In certain organizations, it's frowned upon to go directly to the CEO and speak to him. Not all CEOs have that open door policy. So yes, that would differ from organization to organization. And just explaining that to your new employee, it makes a big difference. They might have come from an environment before where it was completely different. And if they know, you can avoid a lot of trouble for them. That's what you're trying to do, is you want to make sure that they're comfortable, they feel like they belong there, that they're interacting with others in a manner that's appropriate, but also comfortable for everyone involved. It's very important. Okay. Um, and then you can start with a little bit of training. So there'd be very job specific training. So if you're inducting an administrator, a coordinator, or whatever the role might be, you want to give them a detailed job description and what the expectations are for them. They must know, and it must be documented, especially in the space of HR. In HR, we must have a set list of job descriptions and expectations for each of the employees in those given roles. Okay. And then you also give them initial task assignments and objectives for those tasks, so they know what they have to do and they know what the goals are for those particular tasks that you've given to them. It's very structured, it's very organized. It actually makes them feel at ease because you've given them these things that are documented, it's outlined, that it's straightforward. And it just makes everything so much easier. You don't want there to be a vague interpretation of what needs to be done. You don't want there to be any misunderstandings about what they should be doing or what the end objective is. Okay, and I think also just as a side note or even a footnote, if I could add one, when you are bringing new employees in, it's easier to give them simple tasks to start with. Don't overwhelm them. Don't give them 7 things on day one. Start with little things. Allow it to be an easy introduction, and then before you know it, you'll be able to give them multiple things to deal with at the same time. It's just because it's a new environment, it's a new setting, it's new people. Don't be too hard on them. Okay. Um, and then it says introduction to team members and key stakeholders. So this is very similar to the previous one, but it's more, it's closer. These are the people that your new employee or new staff member will be working with on a daily basis. The stakeholders might have been dealt with in the previous slide, but the team members is what we need to refer to. So if you bring a new employee in, you tell them that this is the team you will be working with. The team must introduce themselves. The new employee must introduce, there must be an introduction all around. And literally there's a process. It's Tuckman's model. You can even look at Balpin's model, for how teams develop or teams roles get assigned. And that's what we're looking for in this space, is having the process of building a team take place. Okay, and that's what you're trying to do with this job specific training. Now, you're not going to be able to go through Tuckman's model in a day. That's not how it works. But you can really kickstart that first step in the model almost immediately by having this introduction take place. Okay. So then you can also, you must also have some sort of support and mentorship in place. So I would always recommend a buddy system. So assign a mentor or a buddy to assist the new hire. It just, again, makes it so much easier for them. Provide them with ongoing support and guidance. So something that I do often, especially when we have new interns or new employees in our office, is I'll go through the introduction. I'll introduce them to the organization. I'll try to take them around the office and introduce them to our colleagues or the staff members there. And then I will also allocate someone they should work with. So a buddy, should we call them a buddy? Yeah, buddy. And once I've done that, I'll also check in. And that brings us to the next point. So schedule frequent meetings to discuss progress and addressing concerns, offer constructive feedback and recognition. Okay. I don't schedule meetings, but I will go to individuals and I'll check in on them. I'll say, hey, how are you finding the environment? Are you okay? You're dealing with things. Just an informal conversation about how they're dealing with the new environment and the tasks they've been given. I also check in to make sure that they're actually working, because sometimes our new employees are not always the most productive. So I try to make sure they're kept busy with tasks and they're all contributing to the overall organization's objectives. And then we get to the second point in the regular check-ins, that offering of constructive feedback. It's very important to understand that there are different types of feedback. And if you're not cautious, your feedback can be very destructive. And if we're giving destructive feedback, it means we're breaking down the individuals. We're not really engaging with them. We're not, we're not building them up. And it's very easy to be destructive. It's very easy. It's a human condition. It's a human phenomena. We are easily destructive of others. It's easy for us to criticize others, but we are seldomly constructive about others. We don't give feedback that allows the person receiving the feedback, to build off of it, which is something that we need to be cognizant of. We need to be aware of. And when they perform well, give them recognition. Go to them and say, hey, well done. You've done an excellent job in this. You've done this very well. It's very important that you do that. Okay. And then also resources. So this was provided in one of the previous slides, but give them access to training programs, allow them to have professional development opportunities, ensure that new hires know where to find help and information they might need. Okay, this just takes that resources to the next step. So if you are, if you're bringing in a new employee, allow them the opportunity to further develop themselves. They mustn't remain stagnant. They mustn't get stuck in their role or position, in the organization. Okay, and then also just knowing where they can get help or additional information. A lot of people come to me for help in our organization. I don't know how that's happened, but it seems to have become a thing over time. I don't mind it. I'm happy to help where I can. But it's nice. It's nice to know that you can assist people and get them through some of the challenges they're dealing with. Okay, just when you have a new employee, tell them this is where you go for this. This is how you deal with that. Give them that little bit of information. Okay. So here are some things to include in your booklet. Now, I'm not saying you must include this. This is not mandatory. This is more suggestive. I'm trying to give you an idea, maybe a starting point for an induction booklet. Again, it's up to you. I want you to be as creative as possible when you do your induction booklets. I don't want yours to be the same as your classmates or your colleagues. It's all about creativity in this task. Okay. Remember in our induction session, I think we spoke about left brain and right brain thinking. In this one, you're going to use a combination of left brain and right brain. So if you remember, left brain is logical, numbers based. Right brain is more creative, and it says take the box and destroy the box. Think outside of the box. Okay. So on the left side of the brain, where we're being logical, is your booklet must have some sort of outline, must have some sort of step. So you start with an introduction, start with this. It must have a process, a flow, and that's where logic comes in. But then you can add a cover page, you can add figures, diagrams, pictures. You can do whatever you want as long as it's creative, and that's where the right brain thinking comes from, where your creativity comes to the forefront. So this task, the development of an induction booklet, is actually an opportunity for you to be as creative as possible. For you to just let loose and see what you can come up with. And you are welcome to use AI softwares to develop the booklet. You're welcome to. You don't have to make up any of the information yourself. You can even select the organization you want to, and you can select, let's say I selected MTN, and I want to make an induction booklet for MTN. You can do that. The only thing I ask, and this is for my own personal OCD because I will be marking that assignment, is if you select MTN, actually use their colors. Okay, so use the yellow. If you select Vodacom, use the red, or if you select what is another? If you select checkers, make sure it has that green in there. Okay, just so that it makes sense to me. I want it to feel as real as possible. If I open your submission and I see an induction booklet that looks like it could have been an actual induction booklet at the organization you've selected, I'll be really happy. I'll be like, I'll give you full marks for it, because that's what we're looking for. I'm not just looking for an induction booklet, but I'm looking for one that is actually usable, that is, it's realistic. Okay, realism is a very important element in this question. Okay, and that's basically, this would cover 2.1. I do have a question for the class. So I want you to think about a time where you started a new job. Okay, what was one thing that your employer did during your induction process that made you feel welcome and prepared? Or conversely, what was something that was missing that you wish had been included? So you can decide which one you want to talk to, but let me start with Abigail. What do you think, like when you were being inducted to an organization, what was one thing they did that made you feel welcome? What was one thing that you, or sorry, what was one thing that you wish was included in that induction?
I wouldn't say I've ever experienced myself being inducted in a job. The only thing they did was just introduce me, my name, and who's who in the company, and that's it. And
And
what
that,
I wish they would have done is actually introduce me to who's who and what my role would be and what is expected of me to do, and also to take me through the culture of the business.
brilliant. That's a very good
Yeah.
answer. That's everything you
Mm.
want. It mustn't just be hi, I'm Abigail, and that's everyone else there. Okay, let's get to
Yes.
work. It's got to be a little
Yeah.
bigger than that, eh?
I needed a little more than that. Yeah.
Of course, of course. But this question is very important because it literally says, let's think about your own experiences you've had with induction, and how can you do it better when one day you have to do that as an HR manager? And you've literally answered that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
tell you
Mm.
honestly that I've never been inducted into an organization. I kind of was, I was working at RHU as a side job when I was in school. And then when I finished school, I started working there full time. And I've worked for other places, but not as a full-time employee. So they've never done inductions per se.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm.
for the one organization, we had a staff meeting and they had a list of new employees, and my name popped up there. But that was it. Because it was completely online, there was no office to walk through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then all I saw was names in a Teams meeting, and I was like, okay, this is the team, and that was it. But it's not like
That's even me.
yeah. Oh, so yours was
Even me.
online
That's
too.
what like, I just saw on the doors. Oh, this is whose office, and that's her name or his name. Mm.
Uh, that's difficult, and then you've got to guess what they look like when they arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's very tricky. So yeah, now that you've had that experience, I want to encourage you and implore you, to when you're in that position one day where you have to induct a new employee to an organization, to make sure that their experience is different to the experience you had. Are you with me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, let me see. Millie, can I hear from you?
Yes, good evening, everyone. And I do apologize for having logged in late. It's a very unusual period of time for me at the moment. But one thing that was done in the company I worked for was that, first and foremost, when I got there, they had an entire 2 weeks of induction program that they had put together. And I was given, the program, what was going to be covered in those 2 weeks. And I was also assigned a buddy, which really, really helped to orientate me into the company. And I felt like there was somebody there that I could go to if I was feeling a little bit out of place or a little bit stuck. And for me, that was amazing. Actually having a full program for 2 weeks was spectacular. So it's something that, I'm currently putting together an induction booklet for the company that I'm consulting with. And those are some of the things that I'm going to be putting in because I thought it was, close to what I would call best practice. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So you've had this excellent experience, and now you want to recreate that for others, in different spaces. That is an excellent job. That's what you should do. And again, that's what we're trying to do with this questions. You want to take the good experiences and duplicate them, and then any of the negative experiences you want to eliminate them, so that anyone who's new to an organization can feel the way you did, with the 2 week induction and all that support, and that's what you want. And let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Once the induction was over, that 2 week period, how was your productivity? How well did you work with others in the organization?
I actually worked really well with them because during the induction process, I got to meet with the heads of the different departments, share ideas with them during the course of those 2 weeks. So by the time I started, I didn't feel like a fish out of water. And it was easy for me to know who to go to and just navigate the who's who of the environment. Yeah.
Brilliant, and that's what I'm saying. That's what we're going for with this discussion so far. Is that if you do the induction properly, your new employees don't feel, like you said, like a fish out of water. They don't feel lost. They don't feel out of place. They feel like it's easy to go to others and to talk to them and to just get things done, which is what we're trying to do with this. That's why the induction is so important. Okay. Now, I have one more question for you, Millie. I know I've asked a lot, but if you didn't have that
It's okay.
induction, if you didn't have that induction experience, do you think that you would have been able to operate as well as you did with it?
Not at all. And that's because I've also had that experience. The one time I got a job, I didn't even realize just how strategic the position was. I got there was nobody to even show me around. When I was taken to my office, I thought it was somebody else's office because it was incredibly huge. And, it was just a mess. I spent about 2 weeks not knowing what to do, not understanding what had happened before. So there was no report from my predecessor. There was nothing, and
No handover,
it was a
nothing.
horrible, yes, it was a horrible experience because I felt that I could have done better. I could have used my time better for those two weeks or so in the organization. And in the end, I literally had to craft my own job description and tasks and everything. And this was an executive position, so it was a mess.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. But I think also when you're in that situation, you have to literally do the little things that you think you can get done, and then hope that it slowly contributes to the bigger tasks, and then eventually you can start tackling those big tasks. But I can only imagine how difficult and how frustrating those 2 weeks must have been. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, can only imagine. But yeah, you overcame it, so congrats to you.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Let me hear from Vukani. Thanks for sharing, Millie. It was very insightful. And also Abigail.
Thank
I'm
you.
getting a feel for the induction experiences we've had. Okay, Vukani, you are a little late, but can you share with us, have you had any negative or positive induction experiences?
Good evening. Apologies for coming late. Just had a problem before, but I'm here now. And with regards to the induction process, I haven't experienced any negative aspects of the induction process. I think for me, it's just that the pace was fast when I was getting inducted. I just needed to know things really quickly and move on my feet. The information was given to me on how to do it. So I just had to learn really quickly so that I was able to apply the things that they were teaching me in a very quick manner, because those things were needed at those times. So yeah, I think with regards to the induction, it was just fast paced, but it was informative, and it told me how to do things, when to do them, who needed those things. Yeah.
But again, it kind of speaks to something I spoke about just before you hopped on the session, but it's not to overwhelm the new employees, when they join an organization, allow them
Yeah.
to find their footing before you throw curveballs at them.
Yeah.
I think, the fast-paced induction might have worked for you, but it wouldn't work for everyone. Do you know what I mean?
True.
Yeah. But thank you, very insightful. I do
No problem.
appreciate that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Ishmael, do you have any induction experiences that were negative or positive? Any ones that stand out?
Yeah, actually, before I share my experience, I wanted to comment on Vukani's one. It makes me think of a football team that is struggling to score goals to win games, and they have to get a striker, and that striker needs to get in and contribute to the team's goal scoring problem immediately and solve. That's the fast pace. Yeah, it sounds like that type of situation where you have to come in and score goals, because that's what you were brought in to come and do. Yeah, no time, you just have to start executing. Yeah, I know, fast pace. Okay, with myself, I had positive induction experiences, and also what I learned when I was inducted at some company many years ago was that the cleaner is actually one of the most important people there. You would think the CEO is important because he's the CEO, but the cleaner is actually the person that in the morning when you have tea, if you chit chat, they will tell you who are the people to keep close to make sure that if you're on a contract, your contract gets extended. They know a lot about the company. They will actually tell you that a formal induction would take a week or two. They would congest that in 2 days and tell you about the do's and don'ts about an organization. That's what I have learned.
That's very
And
true.
so in any organization that I get into, I smile a lot with the guys who clean and have lots of conversations with them. And also through that experience, you get to learn the culture as well of the organization and so on.
Very
Yeah,
true.
they tell you as it is. They don't filter anything.
Brilliant. I think what you're telling us is a life hack here. See, what you're saying is if you want to get into an organization, speak to the guys who clean, speak to the girls that clean. They'll give you the most information. I think that's very true. I think that's very, very true. Thank you. Ish, you want to say? No. Okay.
No. That's the experiences I've had apart from the formal one of who's who and what does my role entail, and going through the developmental programs and that you need to abide to, and so on. Yeah, and who do you report to, and based on your task. But most time in the work I went in, I went in as an experienced person. The only time I went in as a non-experienced person is when I was an intern 18 years ago at RIMS. That's when I started from scratch, but I knew who. And I remember getting frustrated having to sit in a boardroom for 2 months, busy marking files. But that's the slow pace you mentioned. I had to understand the portfolio before I deliver training and be a subject matter expert. Because if you don't get to understand the portfolio, then it's going to be a problem to get some of your learners competent, which is the most important thing at the end of the day of training them in the first place, transferring that knowledge. So later, I then realized that that lesson, that 2 months, was very important in how everything had unfolded in me understanding facilitation and what the POE needs to get into the POE. In what I got to know now with all the experience that I had, some of the things you might undermine them, but they are part of the process.
Of course, yes. Yes, that's very, very true. Thank you. I mean, I guess what Ishmael is saying is that a lot of the things we encounter on our first few days in the organization, even if they're frustrating, they teach you the most important lessons about that organization or about that function that you will be, delivering or doing at that organization. So I'll tell you guys an interesting story about how I got into facilitation. I didn't initially want to do it because I was a little bit stage shy, shall we say. But when it was like 2018, we got awarded a project to do business practice one with learners with disability. And I went to the school, I spoke to the head of the school, I spoke to one of the teachers, and they said to me that they have learners that would love this program. So we interviewed the learners, I put them on, CETA accepted them. So all the boxes got ticked. We found a facilitator, we sent this facilitator there. This facilitator had 13 years experience, and she went in on day one. She did the first day's training. She came out and she said, it's not possible. These learners will never finish this qualification. And she went back to the head office and she said that we should find new learners or we should quit the program. And I heard this and I was heartbroken because I'd met the head, I'd met the teachers, I'd met some of the students, and I really wanted them to have the program. The learners also wanted this program more than most learners want programs that we put them on. So I went back and I said, no, I think that we must give them a chance. And I said to them, I'll do what it takes, even if I have to slightly update the material as I deliver it. So then I updated the material and then I delivered the first lesson and I got them all to complete it competent. I went to the assessor and also the material developer. Firstly, to the material developer to confirm whether my alterations to the material was okay, and he said, no, it's perfect. Went to the assessor and he said, no, this is perfect. We can exit this. And then I just delivered the whole course for them. And I proved to everyone, even that other facilitator who had her doubts, I proved to them that just because you think learners can't do it doesn't mean that's your perception. You shouldn't put your perception on others. And that was the key thing I learned in that moment. Like the things that I think about others is not always going to be true. And what this woman had thought about these learners with disability, because of their severe disability, she thought nothing was possible. She couldn't help them. And I thought, like, if you just alter your approach a little and you accommodate some of the minor things, you can get a lot done. And I'll tell you an interesting thing before I move to the next slide about what happened on that program is we finished the program. I had a group of 25 that were in a bigger group of 100 learners. My group of 25 were the only in the program that had 100% completed the course. The other learners had problems with the portfolios and the works that compiled, and eventually I had to help with the other 75 that didn't compile perfect POEs. And that just goes to show you that initial assumption was so wrong that that at the end of the day, the 25 that I worked with that they said couldn't do the program actually did the best. Just goes to show you. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to continue. I want us to look at the next unit standard. So the next unit standard is all about recruitment and selection. And I always kickstart these unit standards off with a bit of a quote. I'm trying to do this. I think it's a nice way. But the greatest asset of a company is its people. And this was said by George Paulo Leman. Okay, the greatest asset of a company is its people. And this is because it's the people that actually make things happen. It's the people that drive action. It's the people that create culture. It's the people that do everything in the organization. And yes, you might say, Carl, AI is coming in, automation, robotics, all of that. But at the end of the day, you could automate and get as many robots as you want. Your organization will lack heart. It will lack spirit. It will lack that little bit of oomph. So it's very important that we think about the important role that people play. And they are the greatest assets in many companies, in many organizations. It's that little bit of care, that little bit of consideration, it's that empathy, it's that understanding, it's that walking into the office and there's chit chatter, people are having fun, they're laughing. It's a good vibe, it's a good energy. That's what makes it so special. Okay, so let me delve into this. So remember that recruitment and selection is the process of identifying, attracting, and selecting suitable candidates to fill job vacancies. And this is often at the heart and soul of human resource management. And I'm not saying it's the only function that human resource managers perform, but it is one of the more prominent ones, one of the more important ones. It's identifying a job vacancy and defining it, describing it, okay? This process often involves a series of steps, and this includes job analysis. What does job analysis mean? So it actually means going and doing an analysis of the job that you're trying to fulfill, the position you're trying to fill. This analysis means break it down, understand the various intricacies, the complexities of the job, and using that to contribute to what we do in the next step. And in that next step, we are developing a job description. Okay, and then what you want to do is once you've done that job description, you start sourcing potential candidates, and you do this through various channels. And you can ask me, Carl, what are these channels you're talking about? It's not TV channels, I can promise you that. It's going to be internal channels, external channels. Your internal channels would be within the organization. Which employees do we have internally that would be suitable for the position that is now vacant? Okay, external channels would be people outside of the organization. These would be individuals that you would have to bring in and that have to be, again, vetted and checked to see if they fit the particular job position that you have available. Okay, a lot of HR managers would take from both channels, and they'd say that it's an equal playing field, whether you're inside or outside of the organization. Everyone has a fair chance to get the job. Once you've done your search or you started looking for potential candidates, you start screening applicants. And when we say screening, it means that you start checking to see whether they tick the boxes, meet the requirements. Okay, I often find that recruitment is always weird. It doesn't always make sense to me. Some of the jobs require that you have you have a high volume of work experience, but it doesn't always make sense for the job that you're applying for. So for example, there could be a posting for an administrator, and then they require that the administrator have 5 to 6 years experience in that space. I mean, it's not always you're not going to get the most applicants. And again, you could get someone who has that experience, or you could get someone who you could reshape and mold and grow into your organization. And I personally think that, yes, the experience is great, that the individual with experience would know how to deal with a lot of complex issues, but having the individual that's grown, into your organization, it just adds a little bit of edge. It makes it a little more special. But again, it's all depends on what you're trying to do as an HR manager, what kind of job you're trying to fill or replace. I was talking about this today, and we're talking about how do you replace the CEO in an organization, because they often, there's always a thin line when you're hiring CEOs. They always they have these expectations in terms of salary, but also if you're hiring a CEO, they must have a lot of experience. There's going to be an experience requirement. They must have a certain amount of years working as a CEO of that position. And it's weird because how do you become a CEO without being a CEO? Like you have to get that experience. So it's a tricky one. We were debating it quite a bit. But anyway, the next thing you have to do is conduct interviews. And even during the interviews, there are many different ways to do the interviews. Like you'd have to do assessments, and these assessments could be set up in many different ways. It's so vastly different nowadays. And we don't just rely on IQ tests anymore. I know that back in the day, people were like, what is your IQ score? But the IQ test is not the most reliable because it only measures one form of intelligence. If you don't know this, there are many different types of intelligences. Okay. I don't know if intelligences is the plural of intelligence, but I'm just going to say it and stick with it. But what I want to tell you, and I tell a lot of my learners this, is language and the understanding of different languages is a form of intelligence on its own. It might not be measured on an IQ test, but being able to speak and understand 5 different languages is intelligence. Okay, and it is intelligence. So then, once you've done your you've done your interviews, you've done your assessments, you can start making your decision, your final decision. Ultimately hiring the individual that you've selected for the job. But it doesn't mean that you can go to an individual and say, hey, you have the job. You have to make an offer. There's an entire process. Okay. So the goal of recruitment is to find individuals whose skills, qualifications, and values align with the organization's need and culture, ensuring that the right person is placed in the right role to contribute to the company's success. There's nothing worse than putting individuals in the wrong place in the organization. You're just going to destroy any kind of momentum the organization has. You're going to destroy that synergy. Remember, in the last lesson, I spoke about synergy, and that's when all the departments connect and they work together to meet organizational objectives. Okay, I'm going to keep going in the interest of time because now I feel like there is a bit of a time crunch. Okay, so I have some steps I found and I put these in here. It's very wordy. I have other ones that I found that are not mine, but these are 3 steps. So the first one says job analysis and description. So it literally says identify the job requirements and the responsibilities, develop clear and concise job descriptions. The second point says use various channels, so job boards, social media, recruitment agencies, and it says encourage employer referrals. So ask your employers internally to go and find potential candidates they might think would fit the job role that you have or that you're trying to fill. Okay. Number 3 says screening applicants, so reviewing resumes or cover letters, looking at CVs, looking at what best fits the criteria that you've set out, and then shortlist the candidates based on the qualifications and their experience. Okay, these are just 3, and then obviously once you're done with that, you have them come over for interviews, you have them do your assessments, and then you make your selection. You give them an offer an employment offer, I shall say. Sorry. I found other steps it's called AIHR, okay? And they say this is the full cycle of recruiting in 6 steps. They say step number 1 is preparing. So you have your vacancy with the hiring manager or your HR manager. It doesn't have to necessarily be a hiring manager. You write the description, you create the job advert, okay? The second step is sourcing. So sourcing candidates, checking existing talent pools, keep the hiring manager informed. It does, again, keep your HR manager informed. It doesn't have to be a hiring manager. Number 3 says screening. So screening resumes, phone screenings, giving realistic job previews. All of that is very important. Number 4 is all about selecting. So, use an interview guide to structure the process, automate the interview scheduling. Number 5 is about hiring. So performing reference checks. If needed, do a background check. So if your individual is going to be dealing with a lot of money or confidential information, or if it's just policy within an organization, do the background check. Okay. and then also get get data-driven components to help you make the decision. Okay, if it's possible to use a quantitative approach, is often better, because qualitative subjective opinion doesn't help in making strategic decisions in this area or this space. Although if you spoke to someone who has a lot of experience or things to look out for in a particular industry or space, then that qualitative input might help. But generally speaking, when you make decisions in business, you want numbers. You want it. Every decision must be informed by a number. Okay, then number 6 is onboarding, and we literally spoke about onboarding. Onboarding is inducting, and we spoke about this at length, so I'm not going to do that again. But this again is another approach. It's steps to recruiting and selecting employees. Okay, I have another one, and this is by Secret Consulting. Okay, they have these 7 steps. Let's identify the hiring requirements, create the job description, talent search, shortlisting and screening, interviewing, evaluating, and having the employment offer, and then introduction, so the induction. So again, what is the thing that we're noticing with the 3 presentations I've given you, of the 3 different steps, is they're very similar. They're not different. They don't differ in many ways. I mean, the wording might be slightly different, but ultimately they're exactly the same. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to show you, is that the recruitment process is quite similar, or it might have an additional step here or there depending on the organization, but typically follows the same formula. And that should make it easier for you to answer and address questions that are related to recruitment and selection in an organization. Okay, I hope that helps. So now I wanted to talk about the selection process. So, the selection process includes several steps to evaluate and choose the best possible candidate. You have to conduct initial interviews. You can do it via phone or video. And this is just to, get a feel for the individual that you're trying to hire. You want to assess basic qualifications. You want to follow, and once you're done with that, you can follow up with a more in-depth interview. So it could be either face-to-face or part of a panel. If you have a panel, it means you're inviting several other individuals. If you do panels, the only request I have is that you don't put like 5 people in the room. If you want to do a panel, limit yourself to 3 individuals. There's nothing worse than rocking up to an interview and having to speak to 5 people about your qualifications, your expertise, your career. It's going to make the interviewee or the individual being interviewed nervous, and make them uncomfortable. That's not a comfortable situation for anyone. Even if they weren't being interviewed for a job, it would be very uncomfortable to do. Okay, and what you want to try and do is you want to gain an understanding of the candidate, and to see whether they fit for the role that you're trying to fill. You can use assessment tests to evaluate specific skills and competencies, and you can perform reference checks. It's very important that you do perform the reference checks. You want to verify the candidate's background and performance. You want to make sure that they are who they say they are, and they will do as they say they're going to do. Okay. When you do interviews, preparation for interviews is very important. You want to make sure that you are, conducting effective interviews. You're not wasting your candidate's time, not wasting your own time. You make sure that it's structured, it's informative, it's clear, it's transparent. So you want to develop clear interview plan with a set of relevant questions. Okay, don't go in with no questions. Don't wing the questions. I've been there when people don't have a set of questions for the interview. Sometimes they ask questions that are not relevant. They ask questions that are inappropriate. They ask questions that make me uncomfortable, makes the candidate uncomfortable. So just, do a little bit of planning, do a bit of preparation, make sure that you're ready for the interview. During the interview, create a comfortable environment for the candidate. Use a mix of open-ended and closed-ended questions. Make sure that you have some specific questions in there. What I often do when I do the interview is I tell the candidate who I'm interviewing that think of it as a conversation, and I find that often gets them to relax a bit more, because conversations are easier than interviews. Having a discussion about who you are as opposed to answering a question about who you are is often easier. And then also take detailed notes, because you're going to use it later, when you do your final evaluations, you make that selection. Ask the interview, and so after the interview, discuss and compare the notes with other interviewers to reach some sort of consensus about how you feel about the candidate's suitability. Okay, so that's just interviews. Then we have the assessment tools. So assessment tools are vital for objectivity and evaluating a candidate's skills. So imagine if you were recruiting for a particular role or job, and you used one tool for this individual, different one for that one, didn't use one for the third one. That sort of approach is not going to yield good results. In fact, it might confuse people more, and you're not going to find someone that will fit the role because you've switched tools and you haven't been specific in what you're looking for. Okay, the assessment tool is meant to be created and set up so that you're testing the candidate's ability, but also you're showing that you're focused in your search. You're looking for some sort of form of intelligence or some problem-solving skill or anything that's specific to the job role. And the assessment tool makes sure that you have that focus. Okay, if you're switching tools or not using the tool, you're not going to hire effectively. Okay. So there are many different assessment tools. So you could do a general intelligence, you can do a problem-solving assessment. You can do emotional intelligence, emotional stability tests. There's so many different ones that you can use. But it's very important to see what meets the requirements of the job that you're recruiting for, you'll be looking to place for. And then just make sure that you select the individual that obviously gets the required scores that you're looking for. And then inform the individuals that didn't make it as soon as possible so that they don't waste time thinking they got something that they're not going to get. Okay. While we are trying to fill a role and we're trying to be diligent and efficient and effective and all of those hot words, we also need to be courteous of the participants in the process, that they mustn't be left hanging or wondering what's the next step. Okay. Then you have your final selection. So after completing the interviews and the assessment, you want to compare all the data you've collected from your evaluation. And this could include your interview performance, the test results, the references, and anything else you might have noticed. Discuss the findings with the hiring team. So you might not have a team, you might be doing it on your own, and then reach consensus. So you could also, if you're doing it on your own, reach some form of judgment of which would be the best candidate for a role or job, and then extend a job offer. And that's where most people get it wrong. Most people think that you go to the individual and say, hey, you've gotten the job. What you need to do is extend a job offer, clearly communicating the terms and conditions of the employment and highlighting the benefits, opportunities of working with the organization. So what you're in essence doing is you're preparing the new hire for the organization. You're getting them ready for onboarding. You're giving them key things they must know before they sign their contract. Okay, one of my closest friends, whenever he got a job, thankfully he started his own company, but whenever he got a job, he'd read the contract and he'd go through every term, every sentence, every paragraph. He drove people crazy. I think he almost lost a job position because of doing that. But at the end of the day, he picked up things that the organization missed, and he as a result, they had to update the contracts that they were issuing to employees. And it's little things like that, that you could immediately show your value as a potential employer at an organization. But yeah, that needs to happen. Is you need to offer the contract. You can't. I wouldn't go and say, hey, you have a job, come in, and then have them start without that contract being signed and in place. Okay, let's keep going. So now I just want to talk about a bit of diversity in the organization. So to jump into this section, I'm just going to say this quote by Ola Joseph. Diversity is not about how we differ, but diversity is about embracing one another's uniqueness. And in business, in organizations, it's very important to note that we're all different, we're all unique, and we're all going to bring our own little uniqueness to the organization. And what we try to do in creating a culture and a workplace environment is you want to create a space where everyone feels comfortable enough to share what they think, what they feel, and you want to also allow them the opportunity to show off their creativity. Okay, I'll give you an example of how I do it. So I'm very creative when it comes to developing the slides, creating a look and a feel of an organization. I'm kind of obsessive about it. But what you'll note is nobody in the organization would develop slides like I do, or nobody would do the presentation the way I do. And that's just because of who I am. But thankfully, because of the Information Rooms organization, I feel comfortable enough to do things the way I want to do them, because I believe in my vision. I believe in the idea that I have when I'm doing these things. And they're comfortable with it too. And they're comfortable with many employees and individuals in the organization just taking something and running with it and being creative about it. Okay, so that's what it's about. Diversity is not about how we differ, but it's about how we embrace one another's uniqueness. Okay, thank you, Ola Joseph. So when I talk about diversity inclusion, these things are vital to any organization. It brings varied perspectives, it enhances creativity, and it drives innovation in an organization. Okay. Inclusive practices ensure that all employees feel valued and respected, and it's very important that you develop this relationship, this general consensus that we need to respect each other, that we need to value each other and value the role that individuals play. I have a few individuals I work with and closely, and I can see the important roles they play. Without them, the organization wouldn't be able to run. And I think, or hope they do at least, they see the role that I play. But it is really interesting to see. Okay, so yeah, embracing diversity and inclusion is not only going to improve the organization's performance, but it also will reflect on the commitment to social responsibility. Okay, we live in a modern world. We live in the South African context. I'm not too sure about what the diversity status is where you're from, Millie, but I know that in South Africa we have workplace environments that are very diverse. And in most situations, we're very accommodating. We find a way to work with each other. Okay. The benefits of diversity and inclusion in recruitment would include that you have that enhanced innovation, as previously mentioned. You have improved decision making in the teams. Remember, teams benefit from having a wide range of opinions and viewpoints. You might also have a greater market reach. Remember, diverse teams can better understand and better serve diverse customer bases. And that's very important in any organization that's trying to be competitive, that's trying to reach new markets. It could also lead to attraction and retention. So inclusive environments attract top talents and reduce turnover rates. Okay, in spaces that are diverse, where people feel more comfortable, they feel, sometimes when we don't have a diverse environment, it gets a little bland, it gets a little vanilla. So having that diverse environment makes it, makes it a little more special, a little more unique. Okay. So to build these environments, to build diverse and inclusive workforces, organizations should implement the following strategies. So what they should do is they should diversify job boards, so post job openings on platforms that target underrepresented groups in organizations. They should have inclusive language, so using language descriptions that attract broader ranges of candidates. They should have blind recruitment, so remove any identifying information from resumes to reduce that unconscious bias. Remember, we all have an unconscious bias. We have that voice that tells us what to think and feel at any given moment, and it also operates independently. Sometimes we think things, we don't know why we're thinking it, but it's there, and that is something we're trying to eliminate with with blind recruitment. Then you should also have a diverse range of interview panels, ensuring that your interview panels represent a mix of backgrounds and perspectives. Okay, you want to try and accommodate and be inclusive of different backgrounds, different histories, different types of people, so that you can recruit and select them. Okay. So then we also want to raise awareness and provide training on diversity and inclusion. These things are critical to fostering an inclusive environment. Organizations should, think about unconscious bias training. Okay, educate hiring managers, employers on recognizing and mitigating this unconscious bias. Okay, they should also have culture competency training, so it's enhancing the understanding and appreciation of different cultures. You can have a cultural day at the office. You must just do so very cautiously. It must be something that's done with respect, and it mustn't be offensive or demeaning to anyone. Okay, there must also be inclusive leadership training, so develop leaders who can create and sustain these inclusive environments. Okay, I'm just running through this a bit because we are running out of time. But it says, as you move forward, and these are key considerations for future, and this talks to the slides as a whole, to both the first module 2.1 and 2.2 that are presented tonight. But you need to review and update your job description and recruitment strategies. Remember that things don't remain the same. Things are not stagnant. The world is continuously moving. People are continuously changing. We need to accommodate that as HR managers and people that are hiring and recruiting individuals. Okay, you must also implement an inclusive hiring practice that attracts a diverse pool of candidates. Okay, utilizing technology to streamline the recruitment process and enhance candidate experience. Remember, we should not be doing arcade things. We shouldn't be doing manual work when it comes to these things. I'm a big advocate for technology, AI, seeing where we can simplify the process as much as possible. I'm literally working with our systems development learners to develop an online register because I want to optimize the process of recording learner attendance. And we've come up with a way to do it, and hopefully we'll be able to roll it out soon in our online classes. Unfortunately, because I'm doing it in the Information Rooms organization, the classes will be kind of where I test the system. Thankfully, classes are recorded, and we do get the registers of teams, so nothing's lost if the system doesn't work. But I do like trying things. I do like experimenting. I do like digitalization of manual things that require a lot of work. Okay, then providing training on unconscious bias and inclusive practices for hiring managers. So just being aware of the biases you have. Remember, we all have them, and it's most of them unconscious. I hope if you have conscious biases, then you need to just figure out how you can get over them. Okay. Then the final point is continuously monitor and evaluate your recruitment efforts to ensure ongoing improvement. Okay. As I said when we started this, the key points that you should consider. Things don't stay the same. Things have changed and they will continue to change. So, rolling with it as opposed to rolling against it is often easier. Okay. So then to conclude my slides, my discussion tonight, the recruitment and selection of candidates is to fill defined positions is a multifaceted process that requires careful planning and execution. Okay, effective recruitment starts with a clear understanding of the job recruitment and a well-defined job description. And again, this emphasizes the importance of having that understanding of the requirements in the job. Having a good or well-defined or well-worded job description. Okay, if you haven't done that job description properly, you're not going to recruit effectively. Remember, your job description is the first step in the hiring process. If you make a misstep there, you're setting yourself up for failure, in the steps to follow. Okay, sourcing candidates through the various challenges, screening applications thoroughly, using structured interviews techniques and assessment tools are also essential steps to identifying the best possible candidates. And that's what we're trying to do in essence as HR managers. We're trying to get the best talent, the top talent for organizations, or we're trying to get top talent that our budget allows. Remember, we all have constraints in organizations. And then also emphasizing diversity and inclusion throughout the process not only strengthens the organization, but also promotes a positive and innovative work environment. Okay, so now what I want to do is I just want to go through the questions on the formative and the summative, and then see if you have any questions. So while I'm switching over, if we have any questions about what I presented, just raise your hand. If you're all good and you're happy with what I've shared, you can also just give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, I see Ishmael's giving me a thumbs up. Okay, I see Vukani says yes, he's all good. Okay, we'll see if Abigail and Millie do so too. Okay, Millie says yes. Okay, cool. So if we go on the platform, you'll see that we have Skills Program 2 right here. We have the learner guides, we have the formative, the summative, and this afternoon I uploaded the slides. Okay, you should have gotten an email saying that the slides are now there. Millie, your hands up.
Yeah, Carl, thank you. I just wanted to say that certainly this module is very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with the assignments and everything. So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for that feedback. Is there anything else you want to say, or is it just a thanks?
No, that was it actually. I know when I came in at the beginning, you were talking about, the learning material is just, it's not an exhaustive document. And that really made me happy, because when I was doing the assignment, the first one, I was thinking, I can't find some of this information in this material. And but I know that if I went on Google, or if I look at the kind of things I've done in the past, it could answer it. So you saying that just gave me comfort that really we're supposed to go beyond the material and
Please.
actually, put more into it. So thank you so much. Sorry? Thank
Absolutely
you.
no problem with that. I wish you'd communicated, to me, telling me that you were having that challenge, because I would have told you earlier to say, okay, remember that when I set up an assessment, I'm required, to give you supporting materials, but it's only supporting. It's not, it's not decisive. There are many other materials, many other source of information. Okay. I would be afraid if these learner guides were the only kind of informations that existed in the world on HR management. Okay. That would be a scary thought, because then it means the world is limited and there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that.
No problem. So all I need for you to do, Millie, is actually just get that formative one done. Okay, just push, see what you can do at your end, especially now that you have the understanding and knowledge that you can use other sources. In fact, I encourage it. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
No problem.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the formative quickly. So in the formative, you'll see that we have, see, I missed it now. The rubric normally tells me. So there's 24 criteria, which means there's 24 questions. Okay. And I think most of these questions come from the second unit standard. See, there's something missing already. Okay, so I'll fix this on my side. I didn't put the codes in on the unit standards, but I'll do that. It's just I'll copy and paste it into your documents. Don't worry too much about that. Okay, but you'll just come in and put your full names, your ID number. Very important that we do that. And then when we go down, we'll see our questions. Okay, so the first question says, produce a staff induction booklet for new employees that helps them acclimate with the new roles of researching your company. So yeah, you want them to climate with their new role. Okay, and you should do this by researching your company's profile, the structure, planning the booklet's contents, including colleague suggestions, create mock-ups, finalizing the layout, and printing and presenting the booklet. Now, I don't want you to go overboard and creating a mock-up and all of that. I just want to see a booklet here. That's all I want to see. So if you can take a note and say, for question 1, create an induction booklet, copy and paste it in the document. You can even paste it like underneath, right here. Just copy and paste it underneath. Put your booklet there. Create a cover page. Be as creative as you want. All I'm doing is I'm going to go through and I'm going to see that you've put an induction booklet, and I'm going to make sure that you have things that would be typically included in an induction booklet. Now, if you have one thing that another person doesn't, that doesn't mean your induction booklet is wrong. Okay, again, if you open a booklet and it makes sense, you can open it, you can judge it. You can say, okay, this would work as an induction booklet, this would not work as an induction booklet. Those kind of things are easy to judge, easy to determine. So it doesn't mean that you might be missing one subheading or one category that it's wrong. There might be different induction booklets for different organizations, and that's just the harsh reality of it, is that it will be different. And I want to see different induction booklets. So for this question, just develop an induction booklet. If you want, I can even add a page limit, because I know that some of us might get out of hand if we don't have that. So I would limit myself to about 10 pages for the induction booklet, and that includes a cover page and a table of contents. Okay, and then at the end, a conclusion of some sorts. Okay, I think that this, I must just confirm if this is correct or not. I can easily fix it. So if it's a problem in your documents, I'll just go in, I'll edit it and fix it. Okay. But yeah, so there's only one question for this unit standard, and that's to make an induction booklet, and that's for your formative. Okay. Let's go to formative 2. Yeah, so I don't think this is correct. I think the heading is wrong. I'll fix that. My apologies. Okay, so formative 2.2 says recruit and select candidates to, yeah, the title is wrong. The code is correct, the title might be wrong. But let's just go to the question. So question 2 says give examples and describe relevant legislation related to recruitment of candidates in your organization. Now remember, you're not just limited to the guides. You can go and look at what kind of legislation exists in the space. And I will, when I read your answer, I'll look on the memorandum. And again, remember, some of these questions are on the memorandum. It does say that we should accept answers that are not on the memorandum. And that's how it should be, because these legislations are updated, they change, and our material doesn't always cover it. So I don't mark too strictly when I look for these answers. Okay. Number 3 says, describe why it is important for you to have an in-depth understanding of the industry in which you plan to recruit staff into. Make use of an example. Okay. Why is it important to have this in-depth understanding? It's because it's difficult to recruit or place people in an organization if you don't know what the industry is, what we're going to be doing. It is only for 5 marks. So maybe give this description in 3 points and then use the rest of the 2 marks to give examples. Okay. Number 4 says, describe the importance in your experience in a proper planning and preparation for recruitment and selection procedure in your organization. Okay. Keep in mind that this is not a spelling mistake. It's just that the Google's American and organization in South African English is with an S and not a Z. Okay. But with the question itself, it's a personal question. It wants, your personal experience, and it talks about why that planning and preparation is important, for selection and recruitment. Okay, number 5 says, describe the relevant information you'll utilize when you plan to fill a vacancy in your organization. So what is the information you're going to be looking for? And this could include their background, their CV, their qualifications, their experience, the schools they might have attended, any of those things that you might find relevant. Okay. Number 6 says, outline how you selected or designed procedures to ensure the appropriateness for a specific position in line with the organization and legal requirements. Okay. So in brackets, it says organizational requirements could include policies regarding to internal and external applicants. Additionally, confirm how you selected how the selection procedure was confirmed and validated to be the procedure. So remember that in this question, they're asking you, how was the procedure designed? What kind of policies, what kind of legislations were we abiding by? Okay, some organizations have very specific policies when it comes to hiring because they're trying to fill a very specific job, and it does have something to do with that given policy in the organization. Okay. And then also, how do we know how is the procedure accepted? A lot of organizations have a panel or a group of individuals that, draft the policies and approve them or decline them for the organization. There's an entire process that would go into that. They have a panel that would, manage that process. And that's how you know that something is either going to be implemented and enforced or not. Okay. I think there might be an error here. Okay, it's the same question. So I think just skip question 7. Okay. Let me just see. Yeah, so I think this is a duplicate. My apologies. I think I did this under quite a bit of pressure. But number 8, so just skip question 7. We won't grade you on that. Number 8 says, outline possible resources that must be available in the recruitment process. Highlight the methods needed for recruitment, selection, and focus on how budgets are prepared and managed to ensure that it's fit for purpose. Okay, so what we're looking for is what are the resources that need to be available when you're recruiting. Okay, and then highlight the methods needed for recruitment selection and how do we focus on budgets. When we're trying to prepare for this recruitment. Okay, it is only for 5 marks, so I would try and give my answers in 5 points. Okay. Number 9 says, describe the selection criteria and control procedures you've developed in line with organizational and legal requirements, and how do we avoid any kind of bias or partiality. Okay, so it is a double-pronged question, but how I deal with this question is I'd start with the first point. So the first point says, describe the selection criteria. Okay, so we start by describing the selection criteria, and then you start dealing with the control procedures, and then you start talking about how we deal with, partiality or bias that might exist. Okay. Number 10 says, describe how you develop a plan to ensure effective and efficient recruitment and selection. Okay, and they even tell you what the plan covers, so they're giving you a hint in terms of how you should approach that question. Number 11 says, outline how you conducted a recruitment procedure in accordance with the plan in such a way as to have the potential to elicit the desired response. So how is our plan helping us get to that particular outcome that we're looking for when we do the recruitment? Okay. Number 12 says confirm how you've ensured that the initial screening determines if applicants meet the criteria of the job. Okay, so this question is all about that initial screening. Okay. Number 13 says how do you deal with the implementation of corrective action following the evaluation of an initial recruitment plan if the initial screening did not elicit the desired response? So what happens if you don't get the individual you want, so you weren't able to fill the role that you're trying to? Okay, so I'm going to cut off there because we have gone over time now. I've added an extra 10 minutes to account for the late joining. But what I will do is I will encourage you, if you go through the questions and you have any questions about the question, just highlight the question and then put a comment, and you can just go at Carl and my name will pop up. And if you have a question, about that. So so imagine if I'm uncertain. I'll just say I'm uncertain with element X. So be very specific and ask for help. And then I'll assist you with that. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it off there. Before I end the session, do we have any questions about any of the stuff I've shown so far? Any questions about the session I presented, or are we all good? Are we happy to enjoy the rest of our evening?
I'm all good. I just want to thank you, Carl, for especially when I wanted to write a comment, I didn't know what to do. So thank you for showing that to us.
No problem, Abigail. I want to see that when you get stuck, you just at me, at Carl. Then if you do that, I'll get an email, then I can go help you exactly with the question that you're struggling with. Okay. I really like the feature. It reminds me a lot of when we're in class and the students write their answer and I'm walking around and the student rate, and then I go and I see exactly where they're having trouble. It's like that, but just online. So I'd like to see you use that feature.
All right, will do.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Ishmael. Thank you, Vukani. Thanks for the session, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Enjoy the evening. Thanks, Ish.